I want to call this notice of public hearing, town of Newfane order. Notice is hereby given that pursuant to municipal home rule law of the state of New York and general municipal law of the state of New York, the town board of the town of Newfane will hold a public hearing at the town of Newfane Town Hall, 17037 Main Street, Newfane, New York, on the 26th day of April 2023, at a meeting commencing at 6:30 p.m. to consider the adoption of a proposed local law entitled "A Local Law Establishing Restrictions for the Creation and Operation of All Existing and Future Short-Term Rental Establishments in the Town of Newfane, New York." Said local law would establish permitting requirements for said establishments and require said establishments to obtain a special exception use permit from the Newfane Planning Board, and to hear all interested persons for and against such local law. The text of the proposed local law is on file in the town clerk's office, where it may be examined during regular business hours. By order of the town board of the town of Newfane, dated March 22nd, 2023, Mildred M. Grant, RMC, CMC, town clerk, town of Newfane, Niagara County, New York. And at this time, we would like to open the public comment period. I just want to read something short and brief. Please be advised that this is a public comment period. Your comments shall be directed to the board, and what I've done this evening is, since we are working through a local law, there will be no time limit imposed here, because we are wanting to hear all that you may have. We would respectfully though request that your public comments be concise and clear, so that we can allow for others to participate. Slanderous remarks, ridicule, or comments that are meant to defame without authority. You will be asked to state your name and address for the record. Thank you. So at this time, if anybody would like to approach the lectern here, identify yourself and speak regarding the local law.
I've read through the proposed law, but I didn't see anything about the mechanics of it. So if it's approved, what's the process the person would go through to file a complaint? If let's say somebody down the road is in violation, it's a suspect violation. What's the mechanics of that? You have a form, you call the building inspector, is there something online? Where is that in the ordinance?
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, what you would do is, if there's something you see that is in violation or something, contact the building inspector. They are the code enforcement officer. They're the ones that are charged with enforcing the code. And this is a zoning, basically a zoning law, and they'll be in charge for enforcement. And he'll fill out the proper paperwork. Well, you can explain more than me.
Actually, Brian, it's going to be the same format that we do on a regular violation. So if there's a complaint about a particular operation, something find in the law, we would come to the office, fill out a complaint form, identifying the complainant and complaintee, or whatever the terminology is. And from there, we would act on it. We receive same thing we do on the other one. We review them and see if there's a case, and then we would discuss it with the owner.
And is there any length of time for a resolution?
Same thing as with court. We typically deal with a violation in a 30-day manner, usually with the first type of, they're going to give a warning. At that point, depending on if there is some kind of adjustment, correction, we give some kind of a time frame for that. Then we work with the violation. After that, same thing, Avenue mechanism puts it into.
Okay. And I read about the enforcement, so it looks like for the penalties, it looks like I think it was $250 per occurrence. Is that accurate?
Yeah, per occurrence per day. So
Per day.
Per day.
Okay. Yeah, I think, that answers, so that's really handled just like any other ordinance.
Very much so, because it's really, that's what it is, it's a zoning ordinance.
Yes, zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm Eric Vile, 5581 West Cliff, alternate. I'm a Florida resident, and I just happened to be here doing some spring cleaning for my vacation rental, which is also our family home, summer home that we use periodically. I haven't been really keeping up with the previous meetings, but the legislative intent here says that there is existing in the town of Newfane a number of short-term rental establishments in violation of the town of Newfane zoning ordinance. How is that determined? Who's in violation? Somebody who didn't get inspected, or what is the?
What that's referring to, there are some of these, short-term rental, we call them short-term rental establishments. It includes, bed and breakfasts, that's inclusive in our definition, okay? So we're using short-term rental establishments as our, the entity here. Basically, there were a bunch of these that were found that were not in, zoning areas that were not permitted in those areas. Somehow they got in in residential areas and things like this. And there are a lot of them, I don't know how many, we had like about 43 of these that were in zoning areas that under our zoning ordinance were not allowed. And somehow they got in there. So we were faced with a conundrum. What do we do with these? People have, fixed them up, they spent a lot of money on them, they've been using them sometimes for years. Do we just stop them, make them cease and desist? Or do we, which would probably would be, unfair. So what we did is we decided to make any existing units that are not in the proper zoning district permitted. So if you look at, you'll see in the first part of the ordinance that these are not permitted. These are existing ones that are in violation are permitted, subject to the terms of this this ordinance. They have to go through the process to get a permit, as explained in this ordinance. And that permit will be heard by the planning board. It will be working through the building inspector like all our other stuff. And then they have to make sure all of the requirements in this ordinance are complied with. Even though, they may permit it, but they have to get this special exception use permit. And that's basically the process. It's subject to a public hearing also for the people to, the public to comment. So that's why that was put in there. And if you look at the ordinance, there's two parts to it. There's that part for the existing uses that are in violation, and then there's all future special short-term rentals. Those future short-term rentals are going to be specifically allowed in the zoning areas we have designated in this ordinance. That's where we're going to start controlling what gets put in this town and where it should be, so that those will be in compliance with our ordinance in the future. So the way we've resolved the conundrum with regard to the existing is to permit them, but they have to follow the procedure set forth in this ordinance. And then all new ones, as they come in after the passing of this ordinance, they have to follow the provision of this ordinance. If they're trying to put it in an area where it's prohibited under the ordinance, they're not going to be allowed. And then there are other recourses. They have to go in for a variance to the zoning board. Okay, so that's basically how this was drawn up and established we're trying to solve two problems here, the past problem and the future problem, uh, with this ordinance.
Well, thank you for your time. I'm sorry I
Oh,
wasn't
that's
up to
fine,
date.
fine.
but,
A lot of people might not have heard that
Yeah.
explanation anyway, so.
So, over the last, I think it's 15 years, I've been faithfully getting my inspection. Also with the county, although I was notified last year that the county is no longer doing those inspections. So, I believe it was this gentleman came over and did
That would be me.
that's him, yeah. Sorry, I forgot your name here.
Mike.
Mike? Yeah. And, so I have a permit right now and it expires in May. And
For the most
what
part, I'll interrupt real quick.
Okay.
Last year, when the law was being kicked around as far as the adjustments, there's adjustment period. You know, you're one of the first people to contact me, hurry up and get my B and B up to date. So there was kind of almost I'll call moratorium period where we didn't renew a lot of the permits because we thought this ordinance would take place sooner rather than later. But the board took a lot of effort in to try to get this thing right the first time. So here we are a year plus, and we're now trying to enact this. So going forward, that there will be that annual, as Jim said. Annually, there'll be renewals through the planning board and then the follow-up inspections are gonna be my responsibility, and resulting in the continuing or the cancellation of your certification, your licensing.
Yeah, just to be a little more specific as to how the ordinance works. Once the planning board issues that original, special exception use permit, okay, you have to permit. When you apply for a renewal, okay, that permit will only be renewed after, if you look at the ordinance, there are steps that the building inspector is going to be taking with respect to that, the things he has to consider, things he has to do, with this. And then the renewal actually will be done by the city clerk, and that's just gonna be a ministerial act. Okay, that means after, it's been cleared through the building inspector, they'll just approve it. Or if it doesn't get approved, then your next step would be resolve the problems with the building inspector. And then if that doesn't work, then you could be issued a violation and then go to court, but it's all spelled out in here, in the ordinance if you read it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And, Van Buren Alcott. I got a few things I want to try to touch on if possible. The first thing was I started doing Airbnbs a couple years ago, and we had to pay to have someone inspect it, health department and town. And then after a year or so, both the health department and town said it wasn't necessary anymore. So I was wondering, what is it that changed that's making this necessary again? And why isn't, like, we have laws to deal with all the issues already, and the health department, they already said it's fine. So like, what does the town decide? When there's other cities and towns nearby, I do this as well, where they say it's pointless, like they're not gonna get involved doing anything like that, which you guys are doing. So I was wondering, what is the reason for this?
So going back, if you look at the legislative intent, and this was part of the response to the gentleman that spoke before you, there is existing in the town of Newfane a number of short-term rental establishments in violation of the town of Newfane zoning ordinance. That means that people are operating a short-term rental that may be in the wrong zoning ordinance, single-family home, agricultural, etc.
So what is it that makes that not allowed there? Because isn't it just a residential property? Like, why is that not, why
And
not allowed?
we have a zoning ordinance. There's a zoning ordinance in the town of Newfane, as there is with probably every town in the state, okay?
Yeah.
This zoning ordinance, what it does, it establishes various different uses for different areas of the town. Some are industrial, some areas might be good for industrial use, some might be good for residential use, some might be good for commercial use, some might be good for what we call community facilities, to put community facilities in. And if you want, let's say you want to build a automobile garage.
Mm.
But you can't put that in a residential district, okay? That's what the ordinance will tell you. It establishes areas where you can have different type of uses. You wanna, employ, what, in the town. Does that answer
And,
your question?
Short-term rentals are not considered residential.
Pardon me?
Transient housing.
Okay. And, so why do we then need to limit the amount of Airbnbs and stuff like that anyways? Why can't we just stop those? Why can't we just let people know where they can go and can't go? Why do we have to limit the amount? I mean, limiting the amount of Airbnbs would help me anyways, but I still believe in like a free market and stuff.
I have a little trouble hearing you.
Um,
Yeah, he's
I'm
asking.
just not sure why we have to limit the amount of Airbnbs.
There is no limit.
I heard that they were trying to put in a limit of how many they were allowed.
There's nothing in the law
Okay.
that says, the limitations may be inherent in the section D, wherein room sizes, et cetera.
So then what's the permit required for them? Why can't we just say that, those areas that that the people can't have, and why can't they just not be allowed in the areas that they can? Why do we have to still?
It was drawn up with the idea to improve the the safety, the health, and the welfare of the community.
The health-
I mean, if you stick 9 people in one room, that's not a very safe
There's a house
operation.
that you,
Pardon me?
there's actually, you can only do a certain amount of people per like Airbnb depending on how big it is, so you can't do that anyways. But at least because I run an Airbnb and with the laws and stuff like that, because I only have like one bathroom, I can only do 6 people per that place. So there are things that we can do anyways, and the health department should be concerned with that kind of stuff anyways. So I mean, that's what the health department's for. They're the ones that receive the calls for all that and anyways, and they're the ones that said it was fine.
Okay, if you look at the county has a B&B law that it is promulgated back in 2021, I think, the summer of 2021. It does not just apply to bed and breakfast, it also applies to what we call short-term rental establishments. If you look at the county law, which I have in front of me right now,
So
and basically, the county law is basically a health-related law. And a lot of the violations of that county law go to the health department. Okay, our law is basically a zoning law.
Gotcha.
It tells you where you can put the uses. It is also a health, safety, and welfare
What's the permit for though? That's what I'm saying.
ID. Pardon me?
Permit, you're saying it's for the health and stuff like that, but that would be the health department dealing with that. So what's that?
You'll
So
need
you
a
can have zoning
permit
areas
with the
that make
county, and
sense.
you'll need a permit with us.
But that doesn't make sense as to like, I understand we have zoning areas and stuff, but what is the purpose of the permit? What's that actually do? Because of want to make it safe and all that, that's what the health department's for. They're the ones that should be doing that.
They don't anymore. That's
I know
part of
because
why we do
they
this.
said it wasn't needed. They said for what these were, it didn't classify as being necessary for that.
So then that means there's no inspection of them, and that's
And I have
part of why we
a
do
lot of
this.
stuff like that. The town, I even called them and said that they're gonna do stuff like this. They said it's pointless and there's not worth it. I mean, that anyone wants to do something about it, that's what the health department's for. And the health department will do something based if they receive calls and if they deem it's necessary.
The
We
health
we don't want it to
department,
get to that point.
Good.
Yeah.
Health department's not interested, specifically in room sizes and the number of people in rooms. They're not interested in where these units go. These are things that are of great concern to the town in its obligation to provide for the safe, healthy, and welfare.
But what is the
of the
town
community.
doing though? With the money that we're paying to get that permit, what is the town actually checking and stuff like that? I mean,
You're being inspected every year.
All of
isn't
those.
that stuff that the health department should be doing? Like,
They don't do that anymore.
What the
It just
health
seems
department
unnecessary that
does
they
is they inspect your cleaners. Are you using a disinfectant? Are you washing your
But
sheets?
why would the town have that knowledge and stuff? That should be the health department that deals with that.
No, we're doing the health and safety part of it, which is, if you look, and Jim mentioned it about the new law with the health department, they specifically talk about the fire safety issues, the building issues that, as far as getting egress in and out of that building. That's what Mr. Nanki used to do under the previous law, was to go through and examine exiting plans. Do you have your fire extinguishers up? What about your smoke alarms, your COs? That's the responsibility of the building department going forward, it's the same thing.
But like, I've got apartments now too, and I don't have people coming to inspect those, you know, and I have to make sure I've got fire alarms and each.
What town is that?
And stuff like that.
Apartment buildings are under, they're under the building code too, whether it's the city of Lockport.
They're getting inspected, they get inspected.
They should be inspected correctly. Yeah, they should be.
I
What
don't think
town?
that's the thing.
What town or city?
I just bought a 5-unit in Lockport and I've never had anyone come to inspect.
That's this is Newfane.
I mean, we've got places in Newfane too, if your apartments that were.
That's part of the code. So if it's part, if you're in town of Lockport, they do multiple family
Like
residential
you're
inspections.
inspections to make sure that the, you know, fire extinguishers are there for the tenants and stuff, your yearly inspections.
For apartment buildings, that is part of the fire code
For-
out of
for,
New York State.
like, single unit.
Single, that,
That's-
single's a different,
So that's what we know, that's where we're discussing, we're not talking about hotels, we're talking about single unit family houses and stuff like that, similar to like rental properties. That are single family, stuff like that you guys, that, you know, it's not like there's permits to run those or anything like that, you know? So I just don't understand the exact reasoning behind, you know, they've already decided it wasn't necessary before, so why are we going back to this again?
I don't think they did, Mike.
They
didn't
stopped
say it
doing it.
wasn't. We had a law in place under B and B. Short-term rentals, your operation and the rest of the 42 are non-conforming, pre-existing. You were approved
So I.
under the,
so-
I'm not done.
Alright. No, go ahead.
These are things that were approved before under the previous regime. They were allowed to continue under what they used as the B and B guidelines. Currently, that does not happen. It doesn't cover what's happening in the town. So the board took the next step to try to help the pre-existing businesses to conform. We've mentioned it a couple of times. So going forward, Mike, this is what we're saying. You just gotta comply to this. The fees cover a bunch of things. They cover me going out to inspect, and it gets the board together annually to do the reviews. You're pulling 7 people to board, it costs money. So the town's not ready to go ahead and just say, here, let's do it for nothing. You're a business. So there's an operational cost involved for the town also. If we can't say it enough, this is about public safety. Getting people in and out of the areas that you're working in, there's narrower streets, we can't get fire service through there, we can't get an ambulance through there.
So what-
Parking is an issue,
Okay, there's laws for that, can't you?
and there are laws, and it's now in here,
Yeah.
it's in here specifically.
But there's already laws to protect from cars parked.
But not when it comes to a business, you're a non-owner occupied.
So the thing is that when I first got my Airbnbs, I had to pay the town and the health department to come do inspections.
Mhm.
Then they both stopped.
But the town didn't.
The town did stop.
The town stopped last year because we put it on a hold.
Okay, so that's why, that's. all I was
1
confused
year.
about. So you guys put on hold then, okay,
That's all it was.
alright, I just
We
didn't
did
know, I
not
thought you
hold
guys had
them.
stopped.
We did not.
Alright, well, I guess that's, all I've got then, I still, you know, think if anything's gonna be happening like that, should probably be done in the health department, and we already have laws in place for people not parking where they're supposed to be and stuff like that. So I just think it's unnecessary, but at least it's not too much. Alright, thank you.
Thank you for speaking.
Maxwell, 1698 Lockport Alcott Road. I hear you talking about pre-existing businesses that have been here for many, many years. My wife Lori and I moved to Alcott 6 years ago. We spent, without being specific, at least $150,000. We live in a single-family district immediately across from the fire hall, but we live in a 2-family home. We lived upstairs for 3 years, fixed it up, and we moved downstairs with the idea that we were gonna have an Airbnb. We had an inspection scheduled with your predecessor, Doug. And then COVID hit. Lori and I are both in our 60s. I'm 65. I'm on Social Security. That was how we were gonna make some money. But because of COVID, we couldn't afford to have anybody in our house. So that property has been vacant for the last 3+ years, ready to rent. And I'm wondering, is any consideration going to be made for somebody who lives in, this is our retirement home, that's a 2-family home. We're not renting it to somebody and not being there. They live, it's right upstairs from where we live. Are any concessions going to be made for someone like us who should have been open 3 years ago? But because of COVID and our age and our health issues, it never happened. I don't think we should be penalized for that. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
Ed Pettit, 3189 Coma Road. Got a couple of questions on clarification around the no more than one short-term rental establishment permitted on any lot or property. So for something like, say, a duplex that's in an area where fishermen rent a lot, each unit within the house, we would consider a separate Airbnb. But I think you're going to term that as, since it's one property, that there'd be a limit that you can only use one of them as an Airbnb. Is that the correct statement?
One unit with two rooms.
Let's say one house with
Well,
two
it's gonna be one structure.
units, one
So-
structure.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able, I think the intention of this law, and maybe that's what the clarification is that you can't have, one structure on there and then place another one that becomes another rental. You can't have
Okay.
two separate rentals structure wise.
Okay.
I don't think it was gonna get into the multiple.
The subdivisions of a single
I
structure.
don't think that was the intention, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's what we discussed during work sessions. You're right.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's a good.
It was just trying to, because I've got a couple applicants that have properties that have multiple dwellings already on them. And so the question was, well, how many can we do that? And so if I got this building over here that's been converted to a barn, well, I'm gonna rent that one, and I'm gonna rent this one, I'm gonna rent this. Now, that's where the limitation comes, based on the number of actuals, the dwelling itself. Not dwelling units, but the structure itself.
Okay. The next question I have is kind of like on the scope of this and how far this goes. Something that I haven't looked into yet in any depth, but I've heard about it. It's called hip camping, where someone with a farm, like I have 100 acres. I think that in New York State you can have up to two, let's say, campsites without that are allowable. Does this short-term rental cover hip camping?
No.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why, because again, we're talking about structures, dwellings.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Yeah,
clarify.
this sounds like, you mentioned it, it sounds like a campground or
Yeah.
a mini campsites.
Yeah, harvest host, or is it like a harvest host?
I think there's different. I think hip camping is
Is
Something
Yeah.
like that, yes.
somewhere.
hip camping is like what Airbnb is to short-term rentals. Hip camping is that for
You have a
short-term
couple sites.
campsites. There might be other apps that do the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, that clarifies for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name's Todd Horner, on a property at 6826 Hatter Road. And I guess my question is just for some clarification with, we bought a house, my wife and I use it as basically a seasonal home. We come out and do a lot of salmon fishing. We're hoping to use it as a seasonal rental when we're not here. We're still in the rehab process of the home. It was in pretty rough shape when we got it. One of the things that we're looking to do is it used to be a 3-bedroom and then the previous owner turned it into a 2-bedroom and we're trying to reestablish a bedroom. And is there any wiggle room with the 120 square feet? Because the house is a fairly small ranch. If I add up everything behind the door in 1 bedroom, including, open closet space, I've got like 128 square feet. The other one, I've got 119.87 square feet. And then this 3rd bedroom that we're looking to reestablish, if I follow kind of the natural wall lines, there's a couple different things I could do. We're probably going to be anywhere between 109 and 117 square feet. So to me, that's a reasonable bedroom size. Like, how strict is this 120 square foot?
It's based on residential building code, that 120 square feet. So that's how this was established. That's a minimum square footage.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
Very.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're talking minimums, code is minimum. And we talk about building code, you pull out the book, those stats are their minimum codes. We want to see something better than that. And so when we give you a limitation like that, it really is not any wiggle room.
Okay. Because this is the existing size of the home that's been there for 40 years.
But you're talking about remodeling it, see, because you're talking about moving things around now.
Well,
You have an opportunity and you're also gonna change the use, thank you.
but
Now you're
the
not
two
looking-
existing bedrooms,
Remember, you're taking this building, as we just started saying, it was used for a residential, single-family home.
right,
You now want to do it as a business, and the business requirement says you can't have a room smaller than 120.
right,
So that's now up to you to comply.
okay. So if I move a door down the hallway and manufacture space, does that,
If you've got to be able to make that room compliant, whether it says the height is no less than 7 feet, it can't be no less than 7 feet in width, and it has to be 120 square feet. That's what our ordinance is calling for, and that's where the building code comes in.
so, and then I guess a quick clarification on 120 square feet. Does that include basically everything behind the door, like including closet space and,
Yeah, that's a clarification. Technically, it's supposed to be the floor space.
right,
Closets themselves are not living space.
right, but if I remove the doors from what were closets and now they're no longer closets.
Well, then they're not
They're-
bedrooms. They're not a closet if they don't have a bedroom in it, or a closet, no bedroom without a closet in it. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
I need something to drink.
okay, thank you.
Max Russell, 2206 Hess Road, applicant. I just wanted to follow up on our conversation from the work session, or the comments I made at least about the agricultural workers and seasonal workers. At the work session, I just thought that section 260-9, that statement about the seasonal workers, to me, it just seems like it could be opening up some loopholes, and I still stand by that statement. Looking back at the earlier parts, the definitions, for my reasons or my what I'm looking at as far as protections for farm workers, I think definition B, short term, 260-3, item B, short term, occupancy for hire. I think that if we just go off occupancy for hire, that gives the farmers in this town plenty of protection. Because the farmers that are bringing in seasonal workers, we're not charging the workers for anything. So even if we brought workers in for less than 90 days, I don't really see a way that this law could be construed to make farmers with registered labor camps have to do a short-term rental permit. So I just wanted to mention that. I think if the seasonal worker language, I think it just opens up some potential loopholes down the road. I'm not really, like, even myself with registered labor camps, I mean, theoretically, I guess I could rent those out to fishermen in the winter time. And if that was the case, then I'm doing occupancy for hire. I should probably be going through this ordinance. So I'd hate to see in the future some farmer or something that has a actual labor camp that he uses in the summertime, and then he's using it as Airbnb in the winter time, try to argue that, well, this is worker housing, I'm not to be regulated. So that was just what I wanted to bring up about potential loopholes. So hopefully that makes sense. Not that I'm opposed to the seasonal worker language. I mean, I like having that affirmation for the agricultural community, but I just want to be mindful of future issues.
We didn't want to be in a position down the line when there's a different board and different administration that's gonna look at this thing differently. We wanted to try to protect the agricultural workers with this provision, not to create a problem.
Right, and I certainly appreciate that, because currently, I think we all understand what the intent of the law is, but in 20, 30 years or something, I'd hate for a future administration to send me a letter saying I need to have, 6, 7 facilities re-inspected with new fees when the county these are already registered labor camps for, what the farm workers
I
are
think we
doing.
feel more comfortable if something like that is in there.
And I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted to follow up from our last work session comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Carl Cliff Drive, Burke, New York. I have a question on, it is under here, 18, it has to do with the illuminated signs, identification signs. I thought that we had already discussed that, but that was going to be taken out of the, unless I got an older draft here.
You might have an older draft, Patrick.
Did you get it all? That John?
What clause you talking about, Ken?
It was the one about the illuminated sign, 4 square feet. I probably have an older copy, but I didn't get one of the new ones on the came in.
It's on, in paragraph 17, we have a general statement that says, all signage shall comply with the county design ordinance.
Fair enough.
Mary, want to give him a new copy, please? Thank you.
Last call, anyone like to speak? Hearing none, I do declare this, public hearing to close at, looks like 7:10 PM.
Motion?
I'll second. Moved by Councilman Rutland, second by Councilman Bowman. On the question? Hearing none, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None carrying, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. We'll be starting our,